Should you trust the FDA? Absolutely not. Should you trust me? Yes. And I think really that's what it comes to. You have to look at your, truly trusted experts, because we can't trust the FDA right now. We've got RFK that's putting all kinds of nonsense out there about vaccines and autism and et cetera. And this is not a science guy. We have Dr. Markari, who is also saying things that most scientists would not agree with, particularly when it comes to hormone therapy and the benefits. I don't trust the FDA. I don't trust any of the government websites, which I used to. I don't trust the CDC anymore. I mean, it's sad, but it's true.
Well, you, Dr. Lauren Streicher, have a world of qualifications for the conversation we're having, not just as an OBGYN, but in menopause specifically. I want to tell people who don't already know that your Substack is called Menopause, the Inside Information. You're working on a new audio series, which we'll talk about at the end. But our big topic today is the FDA's new decision to remove the black box warning on estrogen hormones. I understand you were in the room when they made that decision. You support the decision, but you have some issues with the nuance and how it was made. So let's take those separately. Broadly speaking, why do you support this decision? Why do you think it's good?
It was a good decision. It was a long time coming. This is something that menopause experts have been working on for a long time. Because if we travel back in history to when those warnings were put on all of the products, first of all, their products were different, the issues were different. But the biggest problem is something called class labeling, meaning that if one form of estrogen was shown to have a side effect such as blood clots, every form of estrogen got that warning. So particularly when we're looking at something like the local vaginal estrogens, the topical estrogens that are applied to the vulva or the vagina to help symptoms like vaginal dryness and painful sex and urinary symptoms, well, those don't cause blood clots. Those don't cause dementia. Those don't cause cardiovascular problems. Those don't cause breast cancer. Yet the FDA required those warnings to be on those products. So let me be clear. This is something that those of us in the menopause world, the experts, have been working on for decades. For a very long time, we have been trying to get those warnings off, particularly the local vaginal estrogen products. So thank you. We are happy that that has happened. This is good news.
Okay, we'll come back to that. What is the nuance you think it missed?
All right. So this is the thing. When we talk about estrogen products, there's really two categories. There's the local vaginal estrogens that I just mentioned, but then there's the systemic estrogens. And systemic estrogens are estrogens that women take either in the form of a pill by mouth or through the skin, transdermal, which might be a patch, it might be a spray, it might be a gel that go throughout the body. And depending on which systemic estrogen you use is going to determine what possible side effects or complications you may have. So the devil is in the details, because you can't say no estrogen causes blood clots. We know that local vaginal estrogen does not. We know that transdermal estrogens don't, but oral estrogens do. Each type of estrogen has nuances. Each estrogen has different things that women need to know as they go through that decision tree of what would be best for them. So often women will say, okay, what's the best estrogen? Which one should I take? I can't tell you that without knowing your complete medical history, what your goals are, what your experiences have been, what you're looking to accomplish. It's so important, like everything else, to individualized therapy. If you went to your doctor and you had high blood pressure, they wouldn't give the same high blood pressure pill to every single patient. The same is true of hormone therapy. So the concern was, if you just take the label off everything and say estrogen is safe for everyone, anyone can take it, well, then you're going to run into trouble. Now, I will say this. I was in the room when they made the announcement, and there weren't a lot of details. There were very few details. In fact, when we were invited to be at that announcement, they wouldn't even tell us what the announcement was in advance. We didn't know if it was
Well,
going to be, I mean, we knew it was estrogen. That was no secret. But we didn't know, was it going to be the local estrogens? Was it going to be the systemic estrogens? What were they actually going to do? So we were all kind of blindsided. So we all, I did my Substack Live real quick, and some other people, a lot of people did stuff without really knowing the details. And then a few days later, they came out and talked about some of the specifics, which was, quite frankly, very reassuring, because the specifics were that they were going to look at these systemic estrogens and look at each one separately. And in fact, I'm taping a new podcast that I'm going to put out in a couple of days that really goes through the details because it's important. It's important that we individualize these products and talk about what potential side effects there are. And it does look like there's a plan to do that. The other
Ah.
point I want to make is the black box warning, because the black box warning is basically a big black box that's on the package insert that's to alert, physicians, pharmacists, clinicians, and patients that step back, stop. This is a really dangerous product. You don't put that on every product. And the real question is even if there's potential side effects, does it deserve a black box warning? And the answer is no. Even if you look at blood clots, which is the number one complication of oral estrogen, it's actually a pretty rare event. And particularly in younger women or women who are not at high risk. So they're still going to have the warning on there, which is very reassuring. They need to have warnings, but it's no longer going to be a black box. So I feel a whole lot better today than I did right when that announcement came out, because they did release some more of the fine print, if you will, in terms of what the plan actually is.
So, can I dig into this difference between different estrogens and what this
Yeah.
actually means? I worry that to some extent this makes people think that there are no risks because, oh, the FDA has now said it's okay. And one of the things I've always been told is you can't take estrogen unopposed. If you're taking it, you need to take it with progesterone. Does that remain true, or has the science changed on that too?
No, the science has not changed on that. And what you're talking about is so important, because if someone has a uterus, what that means is if you take estrogen alone and you don't take either a progestogen or a progestogen alternative, you actually have over time a tenfold increased risk of developing uterine cancer. That has not changed that. And supposedly, to your point, that warning is still going to be there. There's really two sets of things we're looking at. One is, what are the potential risks? And are they still going to alert women to the potential risks? And then there's the other piece that we'll get to, and that is, what are they saying are the benefits of taking hormone therapy? And they're really two very different, separate, uh, you know, issues, if you will. And when you look at the risks, you are 100% correct. You need to know what those risks are. So, as an example, we know that triglycerides, if you have high triglycerides and if you take an oral estrogen, it's going to shoot your triglycerides up. If you take a transdermal estrogen, it's going to shoot them down. So there's so many different nuances here. If you're looking for breast protection, for example, they talk about how estrogen alone without progestogen can potentially decrease the risk of breast cancer. And that has only been proven with one type of estrogen, not with all types. Again, it's all about the details. And one of the things that's very frustrating for women, of course, is they go to their doctors, and very often their doctors are not an expert in this and either really don't know what to tell them or tell them something that's quite frankly not true. And one of the things that I always tell women is, a big red flag is if you go to see your doctor and they say, oh, I'll prescribe estrogen, but I give everyone a patch because a bioidentical patch is the best. Well, no, that's not necessarily the case. It's individualized. A true menopause expert is going to make a recommendation based on your particular medical history, your blood work, and I don't mean hormone levels. I mean things like triglycerides and cholesterol and liver function and all of that. And they're going to look at the whole picture and then make a recommendation. It's not one size fits all.
Can you start a class for doctors? Because I have never heard this. And what the stories I always hear are the doctor saying to the woman, like, well, what do you want to take? Patch,
Right,
oral, what's better for you? Based on
right,
just nothing.
right.
So, couple things I want to unpack. One, you said you agreed you still have to take progesterone with estrogen, but you can take, did you say like a progesterone copy, kind of a
Well, an
progest? What's
alternative.
an
So what I
alternative?
mean by that is, what we are trying to avoid is that abnormal buildup in the lining of the uterus from taking estrogen alone. And it does take years until it turns into precancer or cancer. So you want to do something that's going to prevent that from happening. And the problem with the progesterone is the progesterone that most women take. It's an oral micronized progesterone that the trade name is Prometrium. I don't work for any of these companies. And the problem is most women do just fine on that, but some women don't. Some women don't tolerate it. Some women get bloating. They might get a little depressed. They just don't feel good on it. So they might have a little bleeding. So we look at alternatives. As an example, sometimes we put a progesterone IUD, an IUD that we think of as using that for birth control, but it can also be used to protect the lining of the uterus. In Europe, it's actually approved for that. And in the United States, we do it, off label. And I have an entire Substack article explaining why that's a really, really good option. There's another progesterone alternative called basodoxifin, which is part of one combination of hormone therapy called Duave, which not only protects the uterus, but also protects the breasts. So there's so many options out there. And if a woman isn't doing well on what she's taking or is having difficulty, whether it's bleeding or she doesn't feel good or she's still having hot flashes, there's always alternatives. There's always ways to tweak it in the hands of a menopause expert.
This is fantastic. Would you give us a quick lesson in the difference between what you said is vaginally used estrogen and then oral estrogen? Are they two different delivery systems for the same purpose, or they serve different purposes?
Different purposes. So I want to be really clear with this. If someone is using a topical, sometimes used a local, vaginal, and vulva on the outside, you got to use it both places, then what you are looking at is a product which is not going throughout the body. It's staying on the vulva. It's staying in the vagina. And if you are doing that, the good news is it's not going to go anyplace. But the bad news is it's not going to help your hot flashes. It's not going to help your bones. It's not going to help your mood. It's not going to help your joints. It's not going to do anything that the systemic estrogen will do. It's going to stay right there. And it's going to be terrific for vaginal health, vulvar health, urinary tract health. It's going to prevent recurrent urinary tract infections. It's going to prevent that gotta go feeling. It's going to help women who, of course, have pain with sex, but even non-sexually. A lot of women having painful sex isn't their issue. It's that they're always irritated and itchy and their vulva just feels like, how did this vulva get on my body? And a local vaginal estrogen is going to take care of that. There's a lot of different products. They are not all the same. I run through all the nuances and my new upcoming series, Come Again, which is a 30-episode audio series on sexuality. But I also get into the nuances of what these local vaginal estrogens are going to do in terms of different products. We were just talking about with systemic, how different products do different things. There's a difference between the cream and the ring and the tablet. And to your point, sometimes a woman will go to her doctor and say, I want a local vaginal estrogen. And he'll say, well, which one do you want? Well, how about telling her which one she's going to get the biggest bang from? What are her issues? Is it the bladder stuff? Is it the opening to the vagina that's the problem? Or is it inside? You got to know those details. And then systemic, of course, is going to go throughout the body. We have estrogen receptors everywhere in the brain, in the skin, in the joints, in the muscle. It's not just in the reproductive organs, in the blood vessels, you name it. You're going to find estrogen receptors in the mouth. That's why postmenopause women get dry mouth, so many of these other symptoms. And the systemic estrogen is going to go everywhere. The main purpose, of course, of systemic estrogen is to alleviate symptoms like hot flashes, night sweats, to help with perimenopausal mood changes, to help with bone health. It's going to help maintain your bone density. And that's actually, just to circle back to the FDA issue, one of the issues that I had is in the messaging from RFK and Marty Markari. They were talking about, this is basically a longevity drug and it's the fountain of youth. And you should take these, everyone should take this so that it's going to help with dementia and it's going to help keeping you from, they actually said it will decrease your risk of divorce. I kid you not. They made it sound like if you don't take estrogen,
I know.
you are destined. You are destined to live not only a miserable life, but have a premature death and lose your marriage. So there's that. We could talk about the risks and the fact how happy we are that we're getting rid of this label, but then there's the reasons that someone might take hormone therapy.
Okay, can I ask you a couple of speed round questions so we can go through them, and then I want to. One is, how long does one take hormones once one starts? For the rest of one's life, or till a certain age?
It depends on why you're taking it. Again, individualized. So, as an example, if someone is taking hormone therapy primarily because of hot flashes last on average, depending on your ethnicity, 7 to 10 years. Black women, they tend to start earlier and last longer. But certainly if that's the reason you're taking it, you want to take it at least as long as you're going to have those hot flashes. And for about 10% of women, hot flashes may even be lifelong. So we're talking lifelong.
Does it make you look younger and feel younger?
Well, that's an interesting question because it's not the reason we tell someone to take it. But yes, does it have an impact on skin? We know it can help skin. Does it have an impact on feeling younger? Well, not really, other than that as a downstream thing. If people are sleeping well and they're feeling better, very often they're gonna feel a whole lot younger. But it's not a fountain of youth. This is not a longevity drug. This is not to feel more youthful. And I really want to emphasize there's so many women in the last few weeks since this announcement came out that they said, wow, I never took hormone therapy. Now I'm 60. I'm screwed. And no, nothing could be further than the truth. We know that most women don't take hormone therapy. Most women can do just fine. All the other things we do in terms of our health are having
But
a
can you
far
start
bigger
at
impact.
60?
It depends. It depends. Again, what are your goals? So I have an entire podcast episode on when you can start hormone therapy after 60, what to look for, what you should avoid. If the reason you're doing it is because you think it's going to help dementia, no, no. If you're doing it because you're still having hot flashes, well, then yes, you may be a candidate, but we need to be a little bit more careful about what you're doing. You may be better on a transdermal. We need to look at some
Amazing.
other things.
Okay, speed round, testosterone. Good, bad, or it depends? And what's it
Depends.
for? What's it
It depends.
for
All right. Well, the
for a
only
woman?
thing that we really have good data on in testosterone is to help with libido. And it works in about 50% of postmenopause women. And that's because libido is so multifactorial. I think I have at least 3 episodes on Come Again that talk about, testosterone and libido and what's when it works, when it doesn't, what to avoid, such as pellets. You got to be careful with testosterone. If it's not in the right hands, if you have too high doses, yeah, you can get hair loss where you don't want it, like on your head, and hair growth where I just say that opposite. You get hair loss where you want your hair, and then you get hair growth
Yeah.
where you don't want it, like on
And
your face. You can get lowering voice, you can get enlarged clitoris.
does it
You
make
got to
you
be careful.
aggro?
Can what?
Does it make you aggro? Like aggressive, angry?
Oh, aggro. Well, okay. If you take enough of it, but you don't want to be taking that much. I mean,
Right.
the
Okay.
idea is not to give you high doses. The idea is to reproduce
Turn it
what
up
you
a
were doing
little.
when you were 20 or
Right.
30. So, no, but testosterone again, that's not a yes no, it's a maybe and it's in the right hands. You got to be careful.
Okay, I want to ask you some audience questions because when I said we were interviewing you and we got flooded with questions, people were very excited. First, one is they say they're nervous about trusting the FDA right now when they say anything. Is
Yeah.
this based on solid science? You address that to some extent, but is there any way in which the FDA is doing something hinky here?
All right, let me just say this, and I'll try not to get too political here. Should you trust the FDA? Absolutely not. Should you trust me? Yes. And I think really that's what it comes to. You have to look at your, truly trusted experts because we can't trust the FDA right now. We've got RFK that's putting all kinds of nonsense out there about vaccines and autism and et cetera. And this is not a science guy. We have Dr. Markari, who is also saying things that most scientists would not agree with, particularly when it comes to hormone therapy and the benefits. I don't trust the FDA. I don't trust any of the government websites, which I used to. I don't trust the CDC anymore. I mean, it's sad, but it's true. So you have to find people that you can trust and
And you're
listen to
one.
what they have to say.
Is
I never thought you'd hear me saying this, but
I know.
I'm
It's
saying
a
it.
shame, but I'm glad we found you. So, is HRT covered by insurance?
Okay, hormone therapy is generally covered by insurance, but not all types. So, as an example, if someone wants to use a transdermal estrogen, generally patches will be covered. It may not be the teeny tiny little patch you want. It may not be the gel. It may not be the spray. Ditto when you look at the vaginal products. It may be that the cream is covered, but that the ring is not, or one of the tablets or inserts is not. So it is absolutely a barrier for a lot of women, but usually at least some form of hormone therapy will be covered by most insurance companies.
Great. Someone asks, can women with HR and breast cancer take vaginal estrogen for vaginal atrophy?
Yes. And when I say that, I say yes without any caveats, disclaimers, or anything. And quite frankly, the breast surgeons are saying the same thing. And the reason is we have multiple studies that have looked at this, long-term studies looking at women with a estrogen positive breast cancer Even if they're on an aromatase inhibitor, even if they're taking tamoxifen, we can still use local vaginal estrogens. And the breast cancer doctors, for the most part, are in agreement with this. I have one of my podcast episodes is specifically about that topic. It was with Dr. Corinne Men, who I adore. And if you don't follow her on Instagram and Substack, you should.
How do
She's
you
a
spell her last name?
Menn. Her handle is Dr. Menogine.
Ah,
And she is a gynecologist who herself had breast cancer in her 20s and is truly an expert in the use of hormones in women with breast cancer. And on my podcast, we went through all the data. And in my notes, I have a list of the articles in support of this that you can share with your own doctor in case they're not as familiar with it. But it is very important that women with breast cancer know that they do not have to suffer with these vulvovaginal symptoms. This is, quite frankly, among experts, not a controversial area.
wow. Um, okay, let's kind of try to end on a positive note. I want to ask you about your audio series, but first, would you tell us what are the benefits of removing this black box warning? Does this expand access? Does it make it, does it increase the likelihood that more doctors learn about hormone therapy?
Absolutely. Absolutely. All of the above. We know that by getting this black box warning, it has been a barrier. First of all, doctors are afraid to prescribe estrogen either because they believe what's in the black box has been in the black box, or even if they don't really believe it, they've quite frankly been worried about liability. So they just don't want to
Mm,
go there. So it's going to remove that barrier. We know that about 30% of women that do get a prescription go home and open the package and read the fine print and say it's not worth
the
dying of,
risks.
this and that just to have a decent sex life. So then they throw it away and they don't take it. And we know also that hopefully all healthcare clinicians, physicians, nurse practitioners, et cetera, will have a greater comfort level, learn more about this, because truly, when it comes to the local vaginal estrogens, every single woman who's having symptoms can safely take it. And the systemic, it is a case by case situation. And this should open up those doors.
Do you have a theory why they did this? Why RFK and Macari made this their first big announcement?
Well, it's not their first big announcement. Their first big announcement was don't take Tylenol because it's going to give you
Right, but I mean,
autism. Their first big announcement was don't take antidepressants because it's going
okay,
to,
okay, fair,
I mean,
fair,
no,
fair.
I'm just saying
But
because
why?
this is, I will tell you my theory and I'm going to get political here. Okay. This is Lauren
Yeah,
Streicher talking. This isn't medicine. This is just me. Okay.
yeah,
My concern is that we have an administration right now that has an agenda. And one of their agendas is not necessarily to help women. And we've seen this in terms of reproductive rights, in terms of vaccine, which has not just women, but I mean, pregnant women, they're saying don't take vaccines. We're telling them, don't take Tylenol, all of this. They needed a win for women. They needed to do
that's what I
something that
thought.
makes them look like the heroes when it comes to women's health. But there's another darker reason, I think, why they did this. And again, this is just me talking, is that they have a bigger agenda, and that is to get rid of mifepristone, which is the pill which is used to as an early abortifacient to end pregnancies. And that is the most widely used method of abortion right now because there are so many states where women cannot get a surgical abortion. It is safe, it is effective, but they don't want it to be available. And by setting this precedent, where they basically put together an expert panel of not necessarily experts, but people that they have picked with their agenda, and then can just decide whether they're going to change a label, remove a label, approve something, not approve something. My concern is that a lot of the reason why this happened was they wanted a win for women, and they're also just setting their approach, the way that they go about this thing, and to say, hey, we have our expert panel. I asked them, I was originally on the expert panel and I dropped off. I did a podcast about that because I said, are you going to have a scientific panel, which is what they've always done in the past? You have a scientific panel of the top academic experts who have published in this world, who make specific recommendations to the FDA. The FDA then goes through that and decides if they're going to make a change based on those recommendations. They did not do that when they put this panel together. And it was clearly not a scientific panel because they had a lot of people on it who were, quite frankly, influencers and people who would not be on such a scientific panel. And I said, is there going to be a scientific panel? And they said, no. No, this is it. We're just putting together, people that we think would be important for the public to hear from. And I said, no, thank you. And I dropped off the panel. So did they, at the end of the day, come up with good changes? Yeah, they did. They did. And I'm glad about that.
I
And this
get
is
it,
going to
but they're
benefit
setting
women.
They're
They're
setting this
setting a precedent.
precedent
They're setting
where
a
they
precedent.
don't need to go to experts and doctors to
Right.
change policy. That
Right.
is
Or they go to
prescient and
their
chilling.
experts, their
Right.
experts that have their agenda too. So
Right.
yeah,
I've seen this.
I'm
It makes
worried.
sense.
Just, I'm worried.
Yeah.
But happy
Okay.
about this. This is good. This is good.
Right.
Women should, I
We'll
want to
take a
end on a
win.
good
Right.
note. Women should be happy about this. They should trust the fact that local vaginal estrogens are safe for everyone, that they are effective, that systemic estrogens are safe for most women and are going to benefit most women, not necessarily to save your marriage. I wish. It's going to take a little more than estrogen to save most marriages that are on the rocks. But the greater good is this is a good thing for women.
And in our last 40 seconds, you want to tell us about your new audio series on sex after menopause, I think?
It's called Come Again, Sexuality and Orgasm.
Love the
It is
name.
30 episodes, 30 audio episodes. It is intended for both every single woman on earth and men who care about their women, but also for healthcare professionals. I have a separate version for healthcare professionals that we were talking about educating doctors so that when you go to your doctor, and even if you say to them, I don't know, I don't have an orgasm anymore and they have nothing to say, but I'm sorry, I'm giving them the tools so that they can help you. So I've been working on this for 2 years. It's been a labor of love. So follow me on my Substack, drstreicher.substack.com. And then you'll get in that early group that's going to get a discount on the Come Again series. And we want everyone to come for Christmas. So we're launching this in early December.
Oh my God, that's great. Okay. I love your energy, your enthusiasm, and how much information you have. See, I always knew that the knowledge is out there. It's just not in the hands of any doctors that my friends and I have met.
Well, it is out there. And my mantra has always been if you give women good information, they will make good decisions. Women are smart. They just need to be given the real information and not just a bunch of stuff that people are using for clickbait.
Thank you. And I overstate it. There are some good doctors that I know, but you
There
get my
are.
point.
There are. It's sometimes a little work to find them.
Yes. Dr. Streicher, thank you so much for your time today. I would love to have you back. I'm sure the audience will have more questions after this, maybe once your audio series is out.
Anytime.
Thanks.